This video is brought to you by Surfshark VPN. Stick around to the end of the video for a special offer they're making available through my channel. Gamers, happy God of War launch week. After 4 long years that have felt like 40 for a variety of reasons, it's finally here, complete with a very, very indulgent marketing push. Did you see this ad that they did? This is a real ad, by the way.
Okay, last night, 2 a.m., I'm laying in bed. What am I thinking about? Kratos.
Are you kidding? That's me, big time. That's common for me.
We believe you. You're being too thirsty.
Still, as impressive as that cast is, that commercial has absolutely nothing on the Japanese promo for the game. Again, this is real. Take a look. It is the Mr. Sparkles of video game ads, and I'm here for it. Never change, Japan. Of course, that's not all that dropped this week. Sonic is back-ish. Really depends on who you ask, but it does seem that most people are happy with where the little blue furball has landed this time around. Looking forward to talking more about that later in the show. For now though, we've got plenty of juicy news, so ain't nothing to it but to do it. Let's go. Biggest news of the week is the PSVR 2 is coming. When you ask? Why bother asking? Of course it's February 2023, the only month of the year where it's legal to release video games apparently. The news came last week in a blog post from Sony where they confirmed a bunch of info. The first was the release date, February 22nd to be precise, available in all regions, subject to local import regulations. We got some insight into the planned launch lineup. Sony have confirmed that we should expect as many as 20 games available at launch, which is a pretty good lineup, but a reminder that the PSVR 1 games will not work with the PSVR 2. Sony put that down to the way in which those games are developed, which, to be fair, does make sense, since the way that movement inputs are handled is vastly different between the two devices. That doesn't rule out developers patching their games to support the PSVR 2, but they certainly will not work out of the box. The flagship launch title will be Horizon Call of the Mountain, but Sony confirmed the existence of 11 new titles as part of that announcement, with a good coverage of genres from horror games to shooters to city builders. It's absent a lot of the VR killer apps like Half-Life Alyx or Boneworks or Beat Saber, but it's an eclectic lineup that hopefully presages plenty more titles on the way. The big talking point about this is the price tag. The PSVR 2 will set you back $549 US, 600 euros or 530 pounds. To be clear, that is more expensive than the cost of the actual PS5, and unlike the Oculus Quest 2, which is a standalone device, you still need a PS5 to play the PSVR 2, meaning that the whole package for 4 games is going to set you back over $1,000 US. Is that too much? Question mark. Well, first I think we need to recognize that the PSVR 2 is an excellent piece of kit, at least on spec. You're talking about the latest and greatest in motion controls, eye tracking, screen resolution. Hell, the controls even have haptic feedback and adaptive triggers. So it's a premium product at a premium price. I'm not saying it's the right price, especially given the economic conditions right now aren't exactly cruisy. I'm just saying that Sony are clearly positioning this as an enthusiast offering rather than something entry-level like Facebook are doing with Oculus. But you gotta wonder how important all of these premium features are. I do use the Oculus Quest 2 and it's fantastic. I fucking hate Facebook, but they put out a great headset. And when I use it, I'm not thinking about the limitations of the tech, I'm thinking more about the limited library of content. Really great VR games exist, but they are rare and have only become more rare in the past 2 years. So it's awesome that Sony are putting their money where their mouth is on this one, and their push will no doubt see an expanded library of games, but over $1,000 is a big ask, and I wonder if that won't really limit how much of an impact Sony's new headset will have on the broader VR market. Turning from Sony to Microsoft news, the acquisition of Activision Blizzard is looking increasingly shaky as the European Commission announced today that they are opening a formal investigation into the proposed transaction. Old Jim Ryan licking his chops at this one. The commissioning outlined their reasoning for the investigation by saying, quote, "A preliminary inquiry raised concerns about the deal reducing the competition in the video game and console distribution markets. The commission also noted potential issues around the market for PCs, writing that the merger might discourage users from buying non-Windows PCs," end quote. The investigation is similar to the one currently underway in the UK, where the CMA has also voiced their concerns about the potential impact on competition. This comes at a time when the price of Activision Blizzard shares still sit below the proposed sale price. meaning that the broader market does not have confidence that this transaction will go through. It's looking increasingly challenging for Phil Spencer, but it's still too early to predict one way or the other how this is going to land. Speaking of Xbox, I got the chance to speak with Xbox's studio boss Matt Booty last week. This was as part of the Friends Per Second podcast, where Lucy James, Jake Baldino, Gerard, aka The Completionist, and I all got to chat with Matt about the way Xbox studios work together and get an update on the current slate of titles currently in development. Stuff like Perfect Dark and Fable and other stuff. We did press him for a release date on Starfield, but we were unsuccessful. Apologies. However, he did open up about the current state of Halo Infinite. Here's what he had to say.
You know, you put it well. It was a little bit of good finish across the finish line, and then sort of the classic runner's mistake of kind of tripping and stumbling as you come across the finish line. And we've got to recover there. So, you know, the burden is on us. The team's very focused on that right now.
This line certainly got a lot of play in the broader media since it was a pretty forthright take on where things currently stood. We appreciated the fact that he wasn't just like, oh, Halo is great, actually, thank you for asking. Still, it doesn't change the fact that Halo Infinite continues to languish, with no sign of a turnaround coming anytime soon. Forge, which arrives in beta today, will hopefully be a step forward, but most hopes are being pinned on the rumored Battle Royale mode, which is all but confirmed to be arriving sometime next year. Not for nothing, but Halo's winter update does arrive today, which includes that Forge beta, campaign co-op via network, mission replay, and some multiplayer stuff. That's a free update, which should be live now. Oh, and also, Halo is apparently getting ray tracing next year, at least for PC. That announcement came as part of a recent AMD showcase. I'm actually pretty keen for that, and I'll definitely be reinstalling to check it out. One last piece of Xbox news, we're getting a Gears of War live-action movie and an adult animated series. Don't get too excited about that adult label, by the way. It just means it's for grown-ups, sadly. Netflix is spearheading this stuff. They tweeted out they have plans for both the movie and the series, as well as the potential for more stories in the future. Don't expect any of this stuff soon, but it's cool to know that it's in the works, as the Gears universe is pretty rad, and I look forward to seeing the beefcakes they cast in it. They have to be wide and short, or they're out. Those are the rules. Hit me in the comments below with your favorite beefcakes should be cast, okay? I want to see this. Turning now to Square Enix, man, they are having a real one at the moment. They posted their financial results this week, and they're not looking too great. Overall sales for the group are down 10% from last year, with a decline attributed to low sales of new titles, stuff like Triangle Strategy, Valkyrie Elysium, and who could forget Babylon's Fall, a live service that flopped so hard that Square Enix are taking it offline in January of next year, less than 12 months after its release. The upside for Square is that Final Fantasy XIV is still going great guns. Little surprise there, as the team is still pumping out top tier updates, keeping the community very happy indeed. Final Fantasy has always been the rock on which Square was built, and it'll take center stage next year when Final Fantasy XVI drops. But we learned this week that it won't be dropping for everyone. Final Fantasy XVI is now confirmed to be a timed PlayStation exclusive for at least the first 6 months. That confirmation comes as part of a recent trailer where a disclaimer could be seen at the bottom. The exclusive window is very disappointing. These are special games, ones that you want everyone to be able to experience together. The story reveals matter deeply, and it's going to be really hard for PC and Xbox players to avoid spoilers for 6 months, or just to look on while PlayStation fans are enjoying themselves. And that's setting aside the borderline hypocrisy of this deal at a time when Sony is dragging Xbox over Call of Duty exclusivity concerns, though I do understand the difference between a negotiated timed exclusive agreement versus buying a company outright and making their output exclusive forever. That is not lost on me. Bottom line though, it sucks that PC and Xbox players have to wait, but that's just how it is, sadly. Square Enix weren't done. They had more disappointment in store for us this week because they recently trademarked the term symbiogenesis, which got people really excited because it has a lot of Parasite Eve energy, the cult classic PS1 horror game, and since basically every other horror series is getting a reboot at the moment, why shouldn't Parasite Eve get a reboot too, right? Right? Wrong, motherfucker, because it turns out that symbiogenesis is just another NFT scam. Square Enix tweeted out some bullshit about an NFT collectibles art project thing, and oh god, the only replies who liked it were bots and those desperate JPEG monkey avatars trying to keep their failed dream alive as the NFT market collapses around them. Square Enix have made clear that they plan to go big in the blockchain and NFT space, and I hope they continue to go down this path, as it gives me a lot of content each week, good excuses to dunk on them. Ubisoft have really stepped back from the NFT path, making my no fucking thanks segment harder to fill, so I'm really appreciative that Square is stepping up to the plate here. Keep it up. Bad news for Crowfall fans. Crowfall is dead. I know most of you are like, what the fuck is Crowfall? It's a good question, so I'll explain. Crowfall is, or was, an MMORPG of the more classic variety. It was a Kickstarter project a long time ago and made almost no splash when it launched a few years back. It's always seemed rather held back by its limited development resources and its smaller player base, and this week the developers have announced that the game will be taken offline on November 22nd, which is very soon. Typically when long-standing MMOs wind up, they give more grace than that, but not this time, I guess. The developers have said that they're still committed to the project and plan to rethink core aspects of it. Nothing's off the table, apparently. But given how little interest there's been to this point, it doesn't seem likely that this will be coming back as a commercial product. Perhaps it moves into a more community management phase at this point, I don't know. But yeah, another MMO bites the dust. Speaking of MMOs, some breaking news here, or at least breaking rumors. We might be getting a Horizon Zero Dawn MMO RPG. This news was first reported by MTN, a Korean financial news site, and they say they have sources close to both NCSoft and Sony who say that the two companies have struck an agreement to develop an MMORPG based on the hit single-player open-world game. This news may not be as surprising as you might think, since it's long been rumored that Sony want to take Horizon into the online multiplayer space, but people guessed it might be something closer to Monster Hunter. Hell, it still could be, because the MMO label is broad and versatile, but it's important to recall that all of this is rumored and it could all be total bullshit. Still, not gonna lie, I'd play a Horizon MMO, I'd play the shit out of that. So more than a small part of me hopes that this is true, even if NCSoft have a bit of a lumpy reputation when it comes to the quality of their releases. A quick update on GTA 6 and the impact of that leak. Earlier, Rockstar had said that they didn't anticipate the leak would have any material impact on the development timeline for GTA 6, and that was reiterated this week by Take-Two CEO Strauss Zelnick. He said, quote, "There's no evidence that any material assets were taken, which is a good thing, and certainly the leak won't have any influence on development or anything of the sort, but it is terribly disappointing and causes us to be ever more vigilant on matters relating to cybersecurity," end quote. There were fears at the time that the leak would force some sort of pivot in the development focus or a major change in the timeline, particularly as there were reports of the source code having been stolen, which would have been a big deal. Apparently that's not the case, so development will continue as planned. We still don't have any idea when GTA 6 will ship, maybe next year, maybe 2024? Unlikely any later than that, but hey, anything's possible. Turning now to everyone's favorite cinema aficionado and part-time game developer, Hideo Kojima. Kojima has a new podcast out at the moment called Brain Structure. And let me tell you, I have been listening to this for the past few weeks and it is excellent. Not as good as the FPS podcast, of course, but excellent nonetheless. In one episode, he's hanging out with the guy who directed Ghost in the Shell, Mamoru Oshii, and they're bitching about producers and they're making fun of James Cameron, calling him fat. In the next episode, Kojima is talking about how he goes shopping for CDs because he prefers physical media in a podcast produced by Spotify. I love it. Anyway, Kojima's been spilling the beans while he's been at it, like when he revealed that he had to bat away a number of acquisition offers that he described as ridiculous. Quote, "Let me reiterate that we are indies, we have no affiliations whatsoever, and we are not backed by anyone, and every day I'm approached by offers all over the world to buy our studio. Some of those offers are ridiculously high prices, but it's not that I want money. I want to make what I want to make. That's why I created the studio, so as long as I'm alive, I don't think I'll ever accept those offers," end quote. He didn't say who was pitching him, but you gotta guess it's all the major players, Sony, Microsoft, Tencent. Hell, I wouldn't be surprised if Jeff Bezos himself flew out there and tried to lure Kojima with the promise of a few $100 million. But Kojima, luckily, is at that point in his career where he doesn't seem much concern for money, so he gets to make weird walking simulators and apparently a horror game, but that's just a rumor at this point. He also clarified that there was no Stadia exclusive Death Stranding sequel in the works, as was rumored at one point, but he didn't rule out the possibility of a different Stadia exclusive that got canned, so that might still be true on some level, we don't know. What we do know is that Kojima had absolutely nothing to do with the scammer Hasan Kahraman, the dude behind Blue Box Studios and that vaporware game he announced abandoned. That turned into a colossal clusterfuck as conspiracy theorists had guessed that that was actually a Kojima project, and he was trying to pull another fast one like he did with Phantom Pain. But it turns out that most of the breadcrumbs were in fact coincidences, until Kahraman himself started feeding the flames with clues and images that absolutely smacked of both Silent Hill and Kojima. Kojima spoke of the whole mess during his podcast, calling the whole thing a nuisance. Quote, "Well, this one, I really didn't understand it at first. Users just kept sending me pictures of this Hasan. They still send me collages and deepfake images, like 20 a day. It's really quite a nuisance. This has been going on for almost 2 years now," end quote. He went on to give Kahraman, who Kojima has never spoken to, some advice. Quote, I don't think there's much he can do or say at this point, but if he releases the game, then people might understand. So maybe he should just hurry up and release it. It will die down after that. Plus, I'm not involved with it in any way. I don't know who started this rumor, but I think this is fake news based on users' wishes and hopes. So Mr. Hassan, I'm sure things weren't easy, and as a creator, I think it's okay to dismiss it completely. But now that there's been buzz and things have gone viral, you should take advantage of it. If you create something good and share it with everyone, they will learn the truth. I think maybe that's what you should do, end quote. Kojima obviously has not read much into Karaman's background, who has little but a string of failed Kickstarters and half-finished projects to his name, so it seems pretty damn unlikely that Abandoned is going to be anything other than, well, abandoned. Just briefly, more Marvel video games are on the way from Electronic Arts. This week, EA announced that they had signed a 3-video game deal with Disney. The first game is already confirmed to be Iron Man, currently in pre-production at EA Motive. There are strong rumors that the second game is a Black Panther game, and that's not the one that Amy Hennig is working on over at her studio, by the way. This is a different one. The third title is totally unknown at this point, but hopefully it's a Cyclops game. Wouldn't that be sick? Cyclops rules. Finally, we may have a release date for Diablo IV on the cards. This is a rumor, so do take it with a grain of salt. According to Jez Quadrant of Windows Central, Diablo IV will launch in April of next year, with pre-orders going live in December, hinting at a release date announcement at the Game Awards. Apparently, a pre-order beta will also go live in February of next year, because that's a good time to do it. Not many games releasing then. Diablo IV is currently in closed alpha testing and is leaking like a sieve, since pretty much everyone who has access to it keeps streaming it or dumping footage online. It's looking pretty good, but until I see for myself how this is being monetized, I'm keeping my expectations in check for this one. So what got announced or delayed this week? Well, outside of the PSVR 2 stuff, there were only a handful of announcements. The first is that the next thing from indie developer David Szymanski is on the way January 2nd next year. This is the guy behind cult classic Dusk and the more recent Iron Lung. His next title is another retro-inspired shooter called Chop Goblins, and it looks weird in a good way. He's describing it as a bite-sized FPS, so don't expect anything too chunky. It's coming exclusively to Steam. A Riven remake is in the works. Back before Fortnite and Minecraft, there was The Sims smashing all the sales records, and before that was Myst, one of the truly breakthrough mass adoption PC titles that sold more than 6 million copies. That was a lot back then. It goes to show you how much gaming has grown in the past 3 decades. Its sequel, Riven, didn't sell nearly as many units, but many considered it to be the superior title, a debate that's sure to resurface when the remaster drops. No dates or specifics at this time. And finally, Atomic Heart got a release date. Not sure if you're across this one yet, but it looks very Bioshock inspired, and the most recent trailer looks fantastic. This is from a new studio, and they seem to be really punching above their weight here, and as a result, interest in this one is sky high indeed. The release couldn't be more perfect for a new IP looking to make a big splash. February 21st, 2023. Same week as Wild Hearts, Like a Dragon Ishin, and the PSVR 2. I feel like every time a new game gets announced for February next year, I'm like, don't make me tap the sign. I keep telling publishers, but they won't listen. So, what came out last week? Well, first up, we got The Chant, which is a horror game set on a spiritual island retreat, kind of like that one Jared Leto has, but probably less creepy. This has landed pretty well, a mostly positive 76% on Steam and a similar fair 70 on OpenCritic. God as a Geek scored this one a 7, saying, quote, "The Chant is a little rough around the edges, but there's some smart ideas and a strong story that keeps you hooked throughout," end quote. While Push Square are back with their hallmark bluntness, scoring it a 5 out of 10 and saying, quote, "It's a frustratingly average title that does nothing particularly well nor insultingly bad. The Chant is just very okay, which is probably the most boring route it could take," end quote. The Entropy Center was one that I was keen for, and I was delighted to see that it appears to have crushed it. This is the one that's like Portal, except with time instead of space, and it's sitting at a very positive 95% on Steam, as well as a strong 83 on OpenCritic. Game Informer gave it measured praise, scoring it an 8 and saying, quote, "With the Entropy Center behind me, I'm fascinated by what Stubby Games accomplished with its debut. It's full of excellent puzzles, but the stuff around them, like bugs and narrative pacing, stop the entire package from coming together in an equally impressive way," end quote. While Xbox Era loved it, scoring it a 9.2 and saying, quote, "If you like puzzle games with brilliant stories, deviously clever puzzles, an incredible atmosphere, and an emotionally charged soundtrack, buy this game. The Entropy Center came out of nowhere and floored me with its brilliance. The less you know before you go in, the better an experience it will be," end quote. Harvestella arrived for the PC and Switch last week, one of the millions of farming games doing the rounds at the moment. This is the one that I was pumped for, and it seems to have done alright for itself, though it doesn't look to be setting the world on fire. Over on Steam, it's sitting at a mostly positive 72%, and only a handful of critic reviews up at this point, but all of them are landing in that 7 out of 10 territory, including Nintendo Life, who said, quote, "Its performance issues and rather simplistic mechanics hold it back from being great, but its quest design, dungeon exploration, and successful fusion of very distinct gameplay mechanics makes it quite compelling all the same," end quote. This one has strong Game Pass energy, so I do expect that when it does arrive on Xbox platforms, you should be able to grab it that way, but that's a guess, so don't quote me. The last thing to shout out is Soulstone's Survivors, the Vampire Survivors-inspired indie that went into early access last week. As I said, this is one of the few Survivors likes that seems to be bringing something new to the table, and Steam reviews agree, with the title sitting at a 92% very positive. No critic reviews yet, owing to that early access label. Positive Steam reviews point to the same addictive quality that makes Vampires so great, only now dolled up with a 3D coat of paint, while more negative reviews point to some visual clarity issues that arise from the more detailed graphics and isometric perspective. Either way, a very solid start for an early access title, and certainly one to keep your eyes on as updates roll through. So what's coming out this week? Pretty meaty week, actually. A good mix of AAA bangers, indies, remasters, and ports. Kicking things off is Football Manager 23, which arrives today on all platforms, but most notably on Game Pass, which is always nice. Oddworld Soulstorm met a quiet reception when it launched last year, but it's meant to be solid enough. It's getting a Switch port landing today. Speaking of Switch ports, Sifu arrives for the Switch today. I reviewed this one earlier this year, link below the like button. Great game, definitely recommended, though some of its design elements can make it a little frustrating at times. Still, it's short and session-based, and it's perfect for the Switch. If you haven't grabbed this one yet, you're in for a very good time. Return to Monkey Island. Now, this is wonderful. I also reviewed this one a few weeks back, link below the like button. Fantastic for new and returning fans alike, and perfect to play alongside your kid if you've got one, or more than one. This was previously a Switch and PC exclusive, but as of today, it's available for PlayStation and Xbox, where it is on Game Pass. Big week for Game Pass, actually. And the last release du jour is Sonic Frontiers. Okay, so I do not recommend this, but we have to put that in context. Here's the spread of reviews on Metacritic, and you'll see that most of them are positive. Some of them are mixed, and only a fraction of them are negative, and I'd actually put mine in that mixed basket more than the straight negative. I think this gets a bunch of things right, like the speed, the boss encounters, the size of the open worlds, but also fucks up a whole bunch of other things, like level design, pop-in, combat, and camera, and lots of other things. Critically, this has arrived at a template for what a good 3D Sonic game could be, and that's a big deal. But this is not a finished product, at least in my view. Most other reviewers don't agree though, with the title sitting at a fair 74 on OpenCritic, which is net positive, especially for a Sonic game. IGN scored this a 7, saying, quote, "Sonic Frontiers is an ambitious open-world adventure that mostly succeeds at mixing up the Sonic formula, even when some of its ideas fall flat," end quote. And GameSpot also scored it a 7, saying, quote, "Sonic Frontiers marks a bold new direction for the series, meshing traditional Sonic action with an open-ended approach to progression and exploration across its semi-open world," end quote. The tradition of divisive Sonic games continues. See you in 3 or 4 years so we can do it all again. There's only one game releasing on the 9th, for who is foolish enough to go head-to-head with the big bald daddy himself? God of War Ragnarok launches on the 9th, exclusive to the PS4 and PS5 for now. Got to expect a PC release sometime next year. I reviewed this, link below the like button. Holy shit. What a game. Incredible. I'm so excited that you guys get to experience this for yourself. I honestly can't wait to hear your reactions to its best moments and biggest reveals. Reviewing it was such a wonderful experience, but you don't get to share that with anyone when you're doing it, or at least only a handful of reviewers. So yeah, I'm excited for this release, even though I've already finished this game. Reviews for this one dropped last week, a huge flex from Sony, obviously confident in the excellence of their product. It's sitting at a mighty 94 on OpenCritic, the same score achieved by the previous game. Incredible feat to match that, given how impactful that original 2018 release was. Everyone scored it a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10, bar a few outliers. GameSpot had a fantastic write-up, scoring it a 9 and saying, quote, "Sony Santa Monica brings back what made the original God of War reboot great and delivers another fantastic story with exceptional writing," end quote. And Forbes nailed it as well when they said, quote, "God of War Ragnarok is a beautiful, moving game, no longer purely centered on a father getting to know his son, but also about vengeance, forgiveness, and attempting to change both prophecy and the people we used to be, both of which proved to be equally difficult," end quote. Enjoy yourselves, people. I am jealous of anyone who gets to experience this for the first time. God of War Ragnarok is cool and all, but have you heard of a game of the generation, Vampire Survivors? If not, it arrives on Xbox on the 10th, where it'll also hit Game Pass. But to be fair, it's like $5 to purchase it, so the Game Pass inclusion isn't quite the bargain that most other releases are. Resident Evil 2 Remake Cloud version hits the Switch on the 11th, with more Resident Evil games to hit the platform in future, so stay tuned. Valkyrie Elysium arrives on PC on the 11th. This one met solid but unremarkable reviews when it dropped for PlayStation a few weeks back. A solid but perhaps too familiar bit of JRPG comfort food. And finally, Tactics Ogre Reborn drops on all platforms bar the Xbox on the 11th. I will admit that I'm not at all close to this one, but I'm seeing so much hype and so much excitement for it. Clearly a very formative game for a number of people, resurrected in what looks to be a fairly comprehensive remaster. That is out on the 11th, and that is the week. It's a big week. Put this on your radar. At the recent Steam Next Fest, there was one game that was very near the top of every best of list doing the rounds. That game was Dredge from indie developer Black Salt Games. Like a handful of other indie titles I've sampled recently, Dredge uses a rather mundane activity, in this case fishing, as the backdrop for a deeper, thought-provoking narrative adventure. You will explore this archipelago, trawling it for pristine catch and upgrading your equipment as you do so, but you'll also explore the mysteries of this place, as each new expedition uncovers more of what's hidden both beneath and above the waterline. This one's already had a lot of momentum behind it, and it's only picking up speed as more people get their hands on it, which is easy to do since there's a playable prologue chapter available right now on Steam. If you'd like to check that out, I've left a link to it over on my Steam Curator page, which also has links to all of the other Put This On Your Radar stuff I've recently covered. I'll leave a link to that below the like button. Sort of free stuff time now, and not a lot to shout out this week, as week 1 is always where the action's at. Still, Epic's got us covered as per usual, and they're right now doing Filament, a cable-based puzzle game, as well as Rising Storm Vietnam 2. Later in the week, that'll tick over to 2 other titles. The first is Alba, a wildlife adventure, a cute exploration-focused game with a lot of Pokemon Snap energy. The other one is Shadow Tactics Blade of the Shogun, an isometric tactical stealth game, kind of like those old Commando games, but more stealthy and with ninjas. Only other thing to shout out this week is an interesting deal that Twitch are running. Up until the 11th, if you purchase or gift 2 Twitch subs, you'll get 3 months of PC Game Pass. It's only available to new customers, not existing subscribers, but given that 2 subs will run you around $10, that's 3 months of Game Pass for a very reasonable price. That's up until the 11th, so get in quick. I recommend subbing to one of those Bob Ross replay channels. Still the best content on all of Twitch, in my opinion. Guys, it's God of War launch week, and I don't think there's anything more appropriate for our feel-good story of the week than Christopher Judge's Twitter timeline. The voice of Kratos has been counting down to the launch date of Ragnarok in a way totally befitting of gaming's best sad dad. He's telling dad jokes. Take a listen.
What do you call a factory that makes okay products? A satisfactory. What did the janitor say when he jumped out of the closet? Supplies! Why do seagulls fly over the ocean? Because if they flew over the bay, we'd call them bagels. How does the moon cut his hair? Eclipse it.
If that doesn't cheer you up and get you hyped for God of War Ragnarok, then I don't know what to tell you. But hopefully you did crack a smile at that or at some other thing throughout the episode. So if you did, could I kindly ask you to smack that like button, because that's a huge help to the channel. If you'd like to come back sometime, could I suggest subscribing, as we do this roundup each and every week, as well as game reviews and previews for almost every major release. You may even want to ding that notification bell so you'll know the minute a new video drops. Bit of a break on the channel for the next while, which is nice since I need a break after Broketober. But we're still looking ahead to reviews for Warhammer Darktide, Evil West, Callisto Protocol, Midnight Suns, and more. Lots to look forward to. I hope you'll join me. Thank you for stopping by, and a big thanks to this week's sponsor, Surfshark VPN. Don't you just hate it when some big TV show is premiering on a streaming service and you renew your subscription, log in, search around for it, only to then discover that it's not available in your region? Believe me, this is a pain that we in Australia know all too well, since a ridiculous amount of content is geo-blocked for us, and that really sucks. Enter Surfshark VPN, the best means of sidestepping all that geo-block nonsense, so you can watch whatever the hell you want, wherever the hell you damn please. In just a few simple clicks, Surfshark lets you connect to their global network of nodes. So in one moment you're in Sydney, and the next you're in London, and the next you're in Delaware, for some reason. Point is, Surfshark lets you enjoy TVs, movies, and games without having to worry about geo-blocking, and depending on where you live, that's a pretty big deal. That's not all though. Surfshark VPN is also the best means of protecting your online data. Your passwords, your IP addresses, your personal information. Surfshark VPN encrypts your online data, protecting it from identity thefts and hacks, and their clean web feature automatically blocks over 1 million known malicious websites, phishing methods, and other threats. In 2022, we can't just trust every website we're shopping on to keep our data safe. We have to take our own steps to protect our data, otherwise these sorts of hacks and scams are inevitable. You can use Surfshark on multiple devices at once, which is something that almost no other VPN allows for. It's available on pretty much every platform you can think of. It has 24/7 customer support, and it also has a full 30-day money-back guarantee. Best of all, they're offering a special discount to viewers of this channel, giving you a massive 83% discount and 3 months free when you use offer code SKILLUP at checkout. Click the link in the description below or visit surfshark.deals/skillup. Thanks Surfshark for sponsoring the video, and thank you for watching it.